So we are on page 10, and we begin with the line, afflicted by his harsh divinity. Afflicted, of course, is distressed, and here it's distressed with a mortal pain. Greatly troubled, grievously depressed. Afflicted by his harsh divinity, bound to his throne, he waited unappeased the daily oblation of her unwept tears. We have to go back a little bit and see that this is the guardian of the unconsoled abyss that is waiting for Savitri to weep. So an oblation is an offering, and he is unappeased. He's not satisfied at all, not pacified. He's bound to his throne, and he waits unappeased for the daily oblation of her unwept tears. Now we see something happening here, because there's a full stop after tears. And then Sri Aurobindo tells us, all the fierce question of man's hours relived. And what is that fierce question of man's hours? He's going to tell us. The sacrifice of suffering and desire earth offers to the immortal ecstasy began again beneath the eternal hand. I was reading today in this new book, fairly new book, Additional Words of the Mother, where she said, Sri Aurobindo was never human. He took a human body to help man, but he was always the divine. It's a very important point here. So we see now that this sacrifice and of suffering and desire that earth offers to the immortal ecstasy here is the divine, began again beneath the eternal hand. Now, Savitri, awake, she endured the moment's serried march and looked on this green, smiling, dangerous world and heard the ignorant cry of living things. So now this flashback is telling us that Savitri is already awake. We don't meet her until her birth, and that's book 4. But this flashback is telling us now that she is awake and she endured the moment's serried march. Now, a serried march is a kind of march where people are packed together, as in the military, and they march in ranks. It's very, very important. And this is not serried, because serried is something that, a word that Sri Aurobindo coined, and we will get serried in Savitri, but now it's serried, pressed, crowded together in rows, in ranks. And she looks on this green, smiling, dangerous world and heard the ignorant cry of living things. Amid the trivial sounds, the unchanging scene, her soul arose, confronting time and fate. Immobile in herself, she gathered force. And then Sri Aurobindo hits us with this final line. This was the day when Satyavan must die. And that concludes Book 1, Canto 1. So we are going to see first who this Satyavan is. We know from the Mahabharata he's the son of the king Dyumatsena. But Sri Aurobindo tells us much more about him, that he is the soul carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance. In a later book of Savitri, he calls Satyavan the Eternal's delicate soul in man. And then again he says, man's representative in the house of God. And then he says these beautiful two lines, the mate of wisdom and the spouse of light, the eternal bridegroom of the eternal bride. So now we will go into this next canto, which is the issue. And here we see what Savitri is meant to do and what she has to go through. And it's an extraordinary canto because we see for the first time the full description of Savitri. And we'll get to that in a while. So we begin now, a while withdrawn in secret fields of thought, her mind moved in a many-imaged past. Look at the alliteration. Mind moved many. Mind moved in a many-imaged past that lived again and saw its end approach. Dying, it lived imperishably in her. Transient and vanishing from transient eyes, invisible, a fateful ghost of self, it bore the future on its phantom breast. Well, this is very, very critical. So her mind is now moving and seeing this many-imaged past in which she lived for centuries. She has always been on earth. In fact, I think that Mother once said that Leonardo da Vinci, that Sri Aurobindo was Leonardo da Vinci, and he was, he was a devotee of Vishnu. So, we see that the divine has always been with us. We think many times during wars and fatal issues that he's gone. He is never gone. He's always working for us. So, a while withdrawn in secret fields of thought, her mind moved in a many-imaged past that lived again and saw its end approach. Wow. So Mother is seeing, Savitri is seeing her death many, many times ago. So this past that lived again and saw its end approach. But even though it's dying, it lived imperishably in her. Even though it's transient and vanishing from transient eyes, even though it's invisible, a fateful ghost of self, it still bore the future on its phantom breast. It bore the future on its phantom breast. Now we're going to see how Savitri is going back. Along the fleeting events' far backward trail, regressed the stream of the insistent hours, and on the bank of the mysterious flood, peopled with well-loved forms now seen no more, and the subtle images of things that were, her witness spirit stood reviewing time. Now in the letters on yoga, Sri Aurobindo speaks of these subtle images. And he says to us, these are not mental images. There is an inner vision that opens when one does sadhana, and all sorts of images rise before it or pass. Their coming does not depend on your thought or will. It is real and automatic. Just as your physical eyes see things in the physical world, so the inner eyes see things and images that belong to the other worlds, and subtle images of things of this physical world also. So, the stream of the insistent hours regresses, moves backward. And on the bank of this mysterious flood, now it's peopled, in other words, populated with well-loved forms now seen no more, and the subtle images of things that were. Her witness spirit stood reviewing time. So Savitri is able to see all of these things of the past. Innumerable past lives. Look, she's even able to see well-loved forms that are no longer visible to anyone but her. And she's able to see the subtle images of things that once were. So all that she once had hoped and dreamed and been flew past her, eagle-winged, through memory's skies. So it's almost like a cinematic show. It's moving so quickly. All that she once had hoped and dreamed and been. Very important, 3 lines, 3 words. Hoped, dreamed, and been. What did it do? It flew past her like an eagle, eagle-winged through memory's skies. As in a many-hued, flaming inner dawn, her life's broad highways and its sweet bypaths lay mapped to her sun-clear recording view. From the bright country of her childhood's days, and the blue mountains of her soaring youth, and the paradise groves and peacock wings of love, to joy clutched under the silent shadow of doom, in a last turn where heaven raced with hell. Look how many things she's seeing. She's seeing her life's broad highways. She's seeing its sweet bypaths. And everything seems mapped out to her because she has a sun-clear recording view. She's able to see all these things very clearly. And now he tells us some of those things. The bright country of her childhood's days, the blue mountains of her soaring youth, and the paradise groves and peacock wings of love, to joy, clutched under the silent shadow of doom, in a last turn where heaven raced with hell. So we see that she has joy, but that joy is clutched under this silent shadow of doom which is yet to come, which is Satyavan's death. Now, 12 passionate months led in a day of fate. Well, when she meets Narad and he comes to visit her family, the king sees some things and he says, if this is all, then all is well. If there is more, then all can still be well. For whether it seem good or evil to men's eyes, only for good the secret will can work. But the queen also presses Narad and she says, she wants him to tell what's going to happen. And finally he says, 12 months, 12 passionate months led in a day of fate, the day of his death. And now Sri Aurobindo speaks to humanity. And he says, an absolute supernatural darkness falls on man sometimes when he draws near to God. And many of the yogis have known this. The Christian mystics have known it very clearly. The cloud of unknowing. One seems to be, as Jyoti Priya used to tell me, in a desert. And so this absolute supernatural darkness falls on man sometimes when he draws near to God. An hour arrives when fail all nature's means. Now, this line has bothered me a bit because in every previous edition of Savitri, Sri Aurobindo has written, an hour comes. An hour comes when fail all nature's means. Now, if we beat the pentameter, an hour arrives, no, that's not very nice. An hour arrives when fail, no, an hour comes when fail all nature's means. Forced out from the protecting ignorance, and this protecting ignorance is what allows us to get by in the world. When we're forced out from it, we either pass away or we take the leap into the spiritual realms of consciousness. Forced out from the protecting ignorance and flung back on his naked primal need, he at length must cast from him his surface soul and be the ungarbed entity within. An ungarbed entity is without any covering. And the primal need is the original need, the primeval need. The ignorance. In the Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo speaks to us at great length about what this ignorance with a capital I is. And he says ignorance is the absence of the divine eye of perception, which gives us the sight of the supramental truth. It is the non-perceiving principle in our consciousness, as opposed to the truth-perceiving conscious vision and knowledge. And in the Mother, he tells us ignorance means avidya, the separative consciousness and the egoistic mind and life that flow from it, and all that is natural to the separative consciousness and the egoistic mind and life. This ignorance is the result of a movement by which the cosmic intelligence separated itself from the light of the supermind. And then he uses the word in a phrase, the divine gnosis, which is a synonym of the supermind, as the real idea is as well. And lost the truth of being, truth of divine consciousness, truth of force and action, truth of ananda. As a result, instead of a world of integral truth and divine harmony, created in the light of the divine gnosis, we have a world founded on the part truths of an inferior cosmic intelligence, in which all is half-truth, half-error. All in the consciousness of this creation is either limited or else perverted by separation from the integral light. Even the truth it perceives is only a half-knowledge. Wow. Therefore, it is called the ignorance. I'll go back just a few lines. An hour comes when fail all nature's means, forced out from the protecting ignorance and flung back on his naked primal need, he at length must cast from him his surface soul and be the ungarbed entity within. That hour had fallen now on Savitri. What does Sri Aurobindo tell us here about Savitri? He says Savitri is the divine word, daughter of the sun, goddess of the supreme truth, who comes down and is born to save. That hour had fallen now on Savitri, a point she had reached where life must be in vain, or in her unborn element awake, her will must cancel her body's destiny. So even Savitri had a body that was destined to perish. So in her unborn element awake, her will must cancel her body's destiny. For only the unborn spirit's timeless power can lift the yoke imposed by birth in time. Only the self, capital S, the self, the soul, that builds this figure of self, can raise the fixed, interminable line that joins these changing names, these numberless lives, these new oblivious personalities, and keeps still lurking in our conscious acts the trail of old forgotten thoughts and deeds, disown the legacy of our buried selves, the burdensome airship to our vanished forms, accepted blindly by the body and the soul. Now, this is not a very easy passage to understand, because first of all, We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines that we have to remember at the same time. So we have now only the self, capital S, that builds this figure of self, our figure of self. Only that self can raise the fixed, interminable line. Now, raise in British English at Sri Aurobindo's time was spelled R-A-S-E. We tend to spell it now R-A-Z-E. Can raise the fixed, interminable line, unending line. And what does that line do? It joins these changing names, these numberless lives, even these new oblivious personalities. Unconscious, unaware personalities, having no memory of what we were, and but it also keeps still lurking in our conscious acts the trail of old forgotten thoughts and deeds. Disown the legacy of our buried selves, so it has to also disown the legacy of our buried selves. We all have a legacy. It's called karma or fate. And to disown something is to refuse to acknowledge it. And a legacy is something that's handed down, a predecessor, or something from the past. The burdensome heirship to our vanished forms. Well, an heirship is an inheritance. So we have an inheritance, and it's burdensome to our vanished forms, accepted blindly by the body and soul. An episode in an unremembered tale, its beginning lost, its motive and plot concealed. A once living story has prepared and made our present fate, child of past energies. That truly is karma. Even an episode in an unremembered tale with a lost beginning and with a motive and plot that are concealed, it's still a living story, a once living story that has prepared and made our present fate, child of past energies. And this is why Mother tells us, don't concentrate too much on the past. We are in a new world, people. We are breathing the supramental force. We cannot move because we are in that force that is moving us. So, our present fate is what? The child of past energies. Now, in a letter on yoga, Sri Aurobindo tells us energy is the working drive of the force. It's active dynamism. The fixity of the cosmic sequences, fastened with hidden, inevitable links, she must disrupt, dislodge by her soul's force, her past, a block on the immortal's road. Make a raised ground and shape anew her fate. So here we have the second time the raised comes up. To tear down to demolish. Now, these cosmic sequences are fixed. The planets rotate, the moon moves around, the earth moves around. The fixity of the cosmic sequences, it's a stability, isn't it? It's a state or quality of being stable, fastened with hidden, inevitable links. She must disrupt, dislodge by her soul's force her past, a block on the immortal's road, make a raised ground, and shape anew her fate. Now we are going to see these gods who are going to interact with Savitri. A colloquy is a formal conversation or dialogue. A colloquy of the original gods, meeting upon the borders of the unknown, her soul's debate with embodied nothingness must be wrestled out on a dangerous, dim background. Her being must confront its formless cause. Against the universe, weigh its single self. We're going to see more about these gods, but I want to share with you a few things from Sri Aurobindo. From the Upanishads, the gods are Brahman, representing itself in cosmic personalities, expressive of the one Godhead, who, in their impersonal action, appear as the various play of the principles of nature. The gods are fixed. The gods cannot evolve. They all have specialties of power, of grace, etc., etc. And they are powers of the dynamic divine. Now, in the essays on the Gita, he says the gods are the great undying powers and immortal personalities who consciously inform, constitute, preside over the subjective and objective forces of the cosmos. We know that the gods really don't like to have to come down and take a body. They're very happy in their powers reigning above, and to go through all the pain and misery and challenges that we have, they're not too interested in that. So, meeting upon the borders of the unknown, this colloquy of the original gods, her soul's debate with embodied nothingness. Now here we have the hundreds and hundreds of paradoxes that Sri Aurobindo offers us in Savitri, because he is trying to tell us something that is so far above our minds that maybe through a paradox we can capture it. So what is an embodied nothingness? It's a paradox. Her soul's debate with embodied nothingness must be wrestled out on a dangerous, dim background. Her being must confront its formless cause. Why does he say its formless cause? because Sri Aurobindo and Mother are unborn. They have chosen to take a birth, but they are not limited in any way to that birth and its strictures. Her being must confront its formless cause. Against the universe, weigh its single self. And I think we'll stop there today. Any questions? Okay. Yes, surely. Yes. But the soul here is not capitalized.
Yes,
it's just the spirit. So we accept who we are blindly. This is B. This is Cesar. This is Lena. We accept who we are, we accept our name, we accept our physical body. We may not always like it, but we accept it. And so that's your answer. It's not the self, it's just the physical, the aspect of it.
Still, that soul is not the psychic being.
No, it's not the psychic being, no. We'll have much about the psychic being in Savitri. But it's a word that Sri Aurobindo coined. It is not in any of the literature of India. It's Sri Aurobindo's own coined word.